sugya of how many pairs of tefillin someone's able to wear, right? And we spoke about very interesting. We're going to segue into a sugya if a person would go ahead and do something to matriach himself. So in the Mishnah we discussed that a person would go ahead and make a kameya that looks just like tefillin. So therefore, chadashos, since they don't have kedusha, you can't bring in. Yeshanos, which we could ascertain without a shadow of a doubt, is a pair of tefillin you could bring in. A kameya, which goes ahead and mimics tefillin, you would not be able to bring in. And the only that's the chadashos of the Mishnah. So in other words, kameya you could go ahead and make any which way. It's a tremendous tircha to go ahead and make it look like tefillin. So that kind of who holds you can't bring it in holds that what a person obviously went out of his way to make a kameya look like tefillin. And we're going to segue into that from the following sugya. We're holding on Sadik Vav Amid Beis about when you see the two dots, I would count off into two dots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines. The two dots. Amr Rebbe Laza. Hamaitzi Techelis B'Shuk. Now, the assumption is that this is real Techelis and not a Kol Ilon and not a false dye. That this is what is from the Chilazon. L'shoinois, if they're uncombed wool, then psulois, they're puzzle, right? Because you don't know, they weren't made lishma for the shem tzitzis. Chutin, but if they strings, ksherin, they will be kosher to use for tzitzis. And we assume they're made lishma. Maishno l'shoinois, that not. The Amar will say, Adaite de glima tzavenu, the person who made it, who did it for the purpose of, he dyed it for the purpose of a shirt. And therefore, they're going to put a blue in the shirt. Chutin nami nema adaite de glima tzavenu. Let's say chutin, the same thing. And for the Gemara b'shazurim, they're twisted. They're not just strings, but they're twisted strings. They're shazurim, like we have. Says the Gemara, and we assume that shazurim would only be made for tzitzis. For the Gemara shazurim nami nema adaite de sifsa de glima aifniu. Maybe they twisted it for the purpose of the hem. The hem is a little thicker than the rest of the garment. So what's your proof that they made it l'shma for tzitzis? Maybe they made it for the hem. And for the Gemara b'mifusakin, if they're short, the chutim are short. Now, if a person is going to make it for a hem, he's going to have a very long piece. If you have short pieces, the assumption is that if it's tzitzis and not for what? For a hem. So two things. One, they're shazurin, and two, they're mufsakin. The kuli havadai like tarach, and a person won't trouble himself to go ahead and make a short one, to go ahead and trouble himself to make what? A long hem. Amarava, chiyadim tareach lasses kameya kimin tefillin. Would a person go ahead and trouble himself to make a kameya like tefillin? And I'll prove to you that he would. So just like by a person would trouble himself to make a kameya for tefillin, who again a person would trouble himself to dye and be mufsak, a short string for a hem. That nan the amurim. When can you bring it in the tefillin? That's dafka be a shanais, where they're old and you can see it. You saw that there's a roshim there that what it was tefillin. Avol bechadashis, where you can't tell pata because we'll say it's a kameya. Now obviously it looks like tefillin. Obviously it looks like tefillin. We're still saying it's a kameya. Go take that outside. This. If it's uncombed, it's puzzle. If it's a chut that is mufsak, that is cut short, it's ksherin. Lefisha ein adam tareach. A person not going to trouble himself to make short strings and then have to trouble himself to put it in the hem. Amarava. Mishum the tani la'ava b'reider azera kipi talula. Should I go ahead and hang my hat on that? Hang rings on that? In other words, I don't have the spineless front from Reb Zera la'ava braid. These Amarayim. I'm an Amar also. I'm a chapis spineless. I'll say a person will trouble. Why? Because I have Tanoic backing. But Tanan, when can you bring it in from the field? Be it Shanas, where you know they're unequivocally that they're tefillin. Al the Chadashas with it, they're what? They're Kameya, despite the fact that mimicking tefillin, they look like tefillin potter. So what do you see? You see Ella Amarava Tarach, Tarach Tanoihi. In fact, it's the Machlaikas Tanoim. Why is the Machlaikas Tanoim the Tanya? I might say tefillin, person finds tefillin in the Sadeh, Machnisim, Zug, you can bring it in what? Where it has appeared. Whether it's a man, whether it's a woman. We had this the other day to prove that woman, this was the shita of Reb Meir, that woman mechuyev tefillin. Alma, Masa v'torach inish. So Reb Meir obviously holds. Reb Meir said that what? Echad chadashis ve'echad yishanois. A person doesn't trouble themselves. So therefore, if it looks like tefillin, it's tefillin. Reb Meir who lets you take it in, guys, it must be because the kameya is nishkain kameya, because no person's troubling himself to make a kameya look like tefillin. So if it looks like tefillin, it's tefillin. And Rabbi Yehuda, who does not, Rabbi Yehuda says that what? That a person would trouble himself, would not let you wear it in. So in Achinam, it's machlokes tanoim. Simin is shitzi, atzv simin. V'hashta Tanya Avu Shmuel. Now, until now, the machlokes of Yishanis Chadashos was predicated upon whether it was tefillin or not. Now we're going to have a different shaila. Not that it was predicated upon whether it was tefillin or not, whether you can be kosher it or not, whether you can go ahead and make a knot. In other words, we know for sure it's tefillin. The question is, can you wear it the way you wear tefillin? And it's a whole different shaila. Now, with the father of Shmuel Bar Yitzchak, Elohein Yishanois, what is considered kol Yishanois that everyone agrees you can wear in is kol sheyesh ben ritzuos. They have straps, umikusharois, and they're tied. Chadashois, what are chadashois? They're tefillin. However, yesh ben ritzuos, they have straps for loy mikusharois, but they're not tied. So the kuli alma loy tarach inshi. Everyone holds that what? No one would trouble himself, and therefore, if it looks like tefillin, guys, it is tefillin. No one, again, if it looks like tefillin, it is tefillin. No question about it. If it looks like tefillin, it's tefillin. Yeah, that's what it is. It's tefillin, no shaila. Question. So why can't I bring it in? Because since they're untied and you'd have to tie it, you'd be making a kesher shel kayama on Shabbos. We know from Masechta Shabbos, a knot that is going to go ahead and be a kesher shel kayama, or a kesher of, and we said a kesher shel kayama will be the kesher of an umin, the kesher of an expert. Hastis, those tefillin was also the kesher of an expert. But right now we're holding kesher shel kayama. Fred the Gemara ulanvinu me'aniv. Why don't you just go make a bow and wear it? And Rabbi Yehuda says you can't. We see from here that what? That aniva making a bow would possibly use from tefillin. So Hastis, Rabbi Yehuda would hold the only way you can wear tefillin is if you wear it the normal way, guys. In other words, you can't wear tefillin abnormally. You can't go ahead just, what are you going to do? You're going to go ahead, find tefillin, make some, make a knot or make a bow or something like that. It's not going to work. When you wear tefillin, you got to wear tefillin the way the kesher looks. So Zosei Meris, when Rabbi Yehuda said you can't make an aniva, it's because you can't make it that way. Fred the Gemara Kasha, 1 second. Abaye says no. Rabbi Yehuda Tamei, the Amar aniva kashir ma'aliyasehi. We saw in Masechta Shabbos, Rabbi Yehuda holds that a bow, in fact, is considered a kesher shel kayama. So even if you could make it in the way it should look, you would not be able to do it. If not was a kesher shel kayama, why in the world do you think you can go ahead and make a kesher of tefillin just going ahead and making a bow? Ivan Rabbi Yehuda B'Rei Rav Shmuel by Shilas Mishmei Derav kesher shel tefillin halacha l'maish misinai. The kesher of tefillin is halacha l'maish misinai. We have to have a shin on top. We have to have a yud, and we have a dalet in the back. So it's got kesher shel kayama. It's speaking about the chayvus machlekes Rashi and Tosfos. What it's speaking about. According to Rashi, it's speaking about the shin on top. According to Tosfos, it's speaking about the dalet in the back of the head. The knot that you have in the back of your skull. That dalet is a kesher. That's the kesher we're speaking about. So how can you think that you can make a bow and wear it? In other words, let's say Rabbi Yehuda held, guys, that a bow is not a kesher shel kayama, and therefore it won't be a Shabbos problem. You have a stam problem. You have a problem in Safros, right? Stam is Sefer Torah, Tefillin Mezuzah, right? That's what it stands for. Sefer Torah, Tefillin Mezuzah. So now you're telling me it's not a Shabbos problem. You're telling me it's a Shabbos problem. Why? You can't make a knot. Fred the Gemara, forget Shabbos. Forget Shabbos. You got another problem. It's not kasha for tefillin. It's not kasha in the parsha of stam. It doesn't work. V'amar Rav Nachman says v'nevayu lebar and neyehen lebar, and the beauty has to be what? Outside. The beauty has to be outside. Again, Rashi, the yud on top, the nun on top, Tosfos the shin in the back, the dalet in the back. And the Gemara, the onevlu ke'en kshira didu. It's Mabel. This guy is a really talented guy. he's able to make a bow that looks like a shin, a dalit. He's able to make a bow in the back that looks like a dalit. So if not for the Shabbos problem, you wouldn't have a stam problem because it would in fact be a dalit. So what's the reason Rabbi Yehuda says you can't do it? Since it's not tied and you can't make a bow, therefore it's a Shabbos problem. I can't bring it in. So initially, you have two ways to learn Pshat in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Machlokes, says Remeya, whether it's old or new, you can bring it in. Says Rabbi Yehuda, only old, not new. At the first way, old and new, we thought that new was whether it's a kameya or not. If it's a kameya, you can't bring it in. If it's not a kameya, you could. And this was predicated upon the machlokes whether a person would trouble himself to make a kameya that looks like tefillin. Remeya held the person won't trouble himself. Therefore, if it looks like tefillin, it's tefillin. Bring it in. Rabbi Yehuda said, no, a person would trouble himself. And therefore, you have no raya that it's tefillin. Therefore, you can't bring in chadashais because maybe it's a kameya. The second way to learn Pshat is we know it's tefillin because no one's going to trouble himself. So if it looks like tefillin, it's tefillin. So what's the problem? If it's shanois, if it's tefillin that's tied, the kesh is there, bring it in. If it's what? If it's untied, chadashais, Rabbi Meir says, go ahead, make a bow, bring it in, no problem. Says Rabbi Yehuda, you can't. Fred the Gemara, why can't you do it? Make a bow. Says the Gemara, a bow is kesher kayama. Fred the Gemara, and even if it wasn't kesher kayama, you still have a problem. You don't have a dalid. After the Gemara, you can have a dalid. That's so a second way to explain the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Guys, good? Amrav Chisna Rav. Halakech tefillin mimi she'ena mumcha. Now you're a middleman. You're buying very common. Most people in the United States are middlemen. They buy from Seifim and Eretz Yisrael. And you're buying from this middleman. How do you know, how does this middleman know that the person he bought it from is a mumcha? So we know, we have the idea of chazaka. If a person repeats something 3 times, it's machzik that he's a mumcha, he's an expert. Good? So now, halakech tefillin misha ein a mumcha, that you're buying it from a middleman. He's not a mumcha. He's buying it from a mumcha. Boidik shnayim shel yad, the acha shel roish. So let's say I'm buying it from Henry, guy named Henry. He was buying it from a guy in Eretz Yisrael. I check Henry out 2 times in either shel yad or shel roish. It doesn't make a difference. You can mix and match, and if 3 times it works out, we're muchzik that Henry's good. If Henry bought from one guy, livdaik, it's the same. If he's using the same cipher, then what? Check the same cipher. You could easily use three heads or 3 hands. And if Henry buys from different guys, tilsa garvei zavin kol chad v'chad boy bedika. In other words, if Henry is buying from 3 different cipherim, what good is it going to do to check out 3 times? On one, you still have that just checks out one guy. What about you may fill in from 2 other ones who aren't experts, so you have to check across the board. So what exactly is the case where you check 2 and 1 and you're good? La'olam michad garvei zavin. La'olam michad is buying. Henry's buying from one guy. And the chiddush is, it's not enough to go ahead. And you're an expert, right? You have to be, it's not enough to be muhsik in one, you got to be muhsik in b'shal yad and b'shal roish. Eat both of them, not just one of them. In other words, one guy. Fred the Gemara, one guy, so do either 3 shal yads or 3 shal roish. And for the Gemara, just because he's an expert in the shal yad doesn't mean he's an expert in the shal roish. So therefore, you have to do 2 and 1, and that would work. In Israeli Sova, Tani Rabbi Bar Shmuel, Bitfilin Boidik Shalosh Shal Yad V'Shalosh Shal Roish. My love, Oish Shalosh Shal Yad, Oish Shalosh Shal Roish. 3 of either one, meaning 3 of this one or 3 of this one, not 2 and 1. Loi Shalosh Mehen Shal Yad, Sama Shal Yad, Mehen Shal Roish. So you don't need 3 of both, and you don't need 3 of either, but you need 2 or 1, and that would work. Freddy Mar Batani Rav Kahana Bitfilin Boidik Shtayim, you only need twice. Shal Yad V'Shal Roish, you only need twice. kasha on Rav. Rav said chazaka is 3 times. Hamani Rebbe he the Amma betrays zimni have a chazaka. Who's it's Rebbe who says 2 times what? It's a chazaka. Rebbe says 2 times the chazaka. If a woman gets married to 2 men and they and both those men die, you're chayish for the next one. You know, you after 2 times she already has established herself as, in the English we say, a black widow, and therefore you will not go ahead and be able to go ahead and do the 3rd time. So this one that says a person's established twice is going to be what according to that opinion. Just have a kasha. Usually we say you need 3 by dinei nefashos. Then we apply Rebbe. For example, you have a child that had a bris milah, he died. His brother had a bris milah, he died. We saw him after Shabbos. The 3rd time, we're not going to do it. Correct? We're going to wait. We're not going to do it. Why? Because it's dinei nefashos. But stam over here, it's not dinei nefashos. It's dinei mamanis over here. It's the guy selling things. It's a kasha that I will try to answer. Anyway, right now I don't have it. It says v'chein, so too, but seves. But seves is what? Is a bundle, right? So the havamina is in the bundle. You go ahead and check the bundle. Two in a bundle. V'chein but seves hasheni. V'chein but seves hashlishi. V'Rebbe shlishi mislei. In other words, you have a bundle. So you have to check 1 bundle, 2 bundles, 3 bundles. Why are you checking the 3rd bundle? According to Rebbe, 2 should be enough. After the Gemara, Rebbe b'tzavasayim. Rebbe's mother by bundles. The mitrei tilts the garvizav, and that you buy from 2 or 3 people, you have to check each one. In other words, I bought this from this one, I have to check. I bought from this one, I have to check. 2 is from the same person. Here, in a bundle, it doesn't mean it's from the same person. The havamina it's from the same person. Kamash Malon. Let's think about you guys. You have a bunch of bundles. And in the bundle, you have many pairs. If you go ahead and check 2 tefillin in the first bundle, you don't have to check anymore. Why is that? Every bundle should be its own need to be clarified, to be muhsik. Every bundle. Just because 1 works, right? Why does 2 work? So Fred the Gemara, you're telling me b'chein b'tzeves hasheni, b'chein b'tzeves shlishi. Now the havamina is, guys, that what? You only have to check twice. Fred the Gemara, the Rebbe shlishi miyaslei. After the Gemara, might the Rebbe b'tzevsayim. The mitrei tlis gavrei zavin. That if you buy 2 or 3 people, you have to check. Why do you stop by 3 guys? Fellas, if you have a bundle and each bundle is from a different individual, it could be 100. You still have to check 100 times, right? 1,000 times. You're going to have to check each bundle. So why do you stop by 3? Says, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We went ahead, Shlishi, go ahead and take it out of the laws of Chazaka. Rabbi said 2, no 3. The whole reason you're saying this is even though all over Trey is Chazaka, over here it's not. Over here it's not. Why we stop at 3? Because all I wanted to take it out is the Chazaka of Rebbe of 2, but not to limit 3. Who are in 4 or 5 and V'chahena, because you're checking each bundle individually. Every bundle, since it's written by somebody else, 1 bundle is not established in the next bundle. Another bundle doesn't establish in the next bundle. The Havamina of the Gemara was that you check 3 times and that's it, and that will work for all the bundles. The answer is doesn't. Why do you say 3 when you could say 4, 5, and 6? Because I only said 3 to take you Rebbe, who in the Reisha said 2. So I said 3, but who I didn't, you'd have to check 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Rabbi Stern, how you buying these tefillin? What are you checking for?
You would check the safris, I guess if with the ksav, and I guess you would check the halachically if they made the bottom are made correctly.
But how you know the guy who made it? Is that be lishma tefillin? No.
We assume that they made lishma. Of course they have to. We assume. We assume it's made lishma. So I guess you'd be checking. You'll be checking the what.
How he made it.
Yeah.
But who says in a bundle? Let's say there's 10 pairs of tefillin. Let's say there's 20 pairs. How many pairs of tefillin are in that bundle? Each one could have been made by a different sofer. So the fact that you're finding that
so again, if it's made by a separate sofer, then you'd have to check each one. No, the assumption is each bundle was made by the same sofer.
Oh, okay. All right.
If you don't know, you'd have to check. This doesn't establish anything.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't establish anything. If you have to check again, it doesn't establish anything. Okay, now the Mishnah had said, let's go back to the Mishnah on page Tzadik Hey and Aleph, Tzadik Hey and Aleph. I'd like to finish the Mishnah because let's go through the Mishnah one more time. Matzat Sivasim by Krichos. The Gemara is going to ask what's the difference. Machshich Aleihem, you stay there until it gets dark. Umeviin, and you bring them in. Ubisakana, mechasim v'hoylachloi. And b'shas sakana, you cover them up. Rabbi Shimon Omer, noisen l'chaveiroi, v'chaveiroi l'chaveiroi. Now, this seems strange that b'shas sakana, where you're covering them up not to draw attention, that Rabbi Shimon would say, start a gauntlet and pass it along to make sure, to maximize publicity, right? The Gemara is going to ask that kasha, right? The l'chara, you'd want to go ahead and hide it rather than publicize it. So too by his son. What does that mean, his son? What are you doing with the son? And son, you can give a barrel to your friend, even though the barrel is coming outside the tchum. They said, you can't do that. Let's say we're going to take each part of the Mishnah one by one. So let's start with the tzvasim and the krichos. Back to us, Tzadik Zayin. Matzon tzvasim krichos, my tzvasim, my krichos. Rabbi Yehuda Amarav, hein tzvasim, hein krichos did the same thing. However, tzvasim is zuve. Those are what? Pairs. You have shalroish and shalyad that are tied together. So you have a bunch of pairs tied together. And krichos is the krichin tuva. You have what? Many that are similar. You have a bunch of things, but not necessarily tied. Just a bunch of boxes. You go ahead and you wouldn't wear them in. Why don't you wear them in one at a time? Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi Yehuda, l'didim mefashlim menei ta'ava, kol she'ilu machnisim zug. Anyone that you'd wear in one at a time, the kalos koydem shkis achama, and you can complete it before Shabbos is over. Then machnisim zug. That's when you go ahead and use that system. And if there's so many that you won't be able to get them all in before Shabbos ends, then machshech aleim, then you go ahead and wait, umevi, and then bring them in. So Hastis over here in this tzvasim and krachim, there's so many pairs that if you'd start wearing them, you wouldn't be able to go ahead and complete the task until Shabbos is over. And Mela, then you're machshech. When you complete the task until Shabbos is over, you wear them in one at a time, or according to Rabbi Gamliel, two at a time. But in this scenario, since you can't complete it, machshech alei, and wait, let it darken. Now, if it's a sakana and you can't wait, that's the next Gemara. Ubisakana, and by sakana, nechasim v'hoylech. Vatanya ubisakana moylech upachas me'arba amas. Sakana, you go ahead and bring them in one at a time. Mashma, you don't cover them up. Mamash, you bring them in. So I'm a rav loy kasha. It's not shver. Ha bisakonas nachri. When are you going to cover it up? That's when it's a nachri. You got a nachri problem. Rashi learns, guys, on the Amid Beis, that anytime there's a sakonas nachri, you'd even cover it up one pair. Again, it's sakana to wear them. So it's not only going on, sakonas nachri going on when you find many, but even when you find one. Since it's sakana, the goyim made us of shasa shmad. They said you can't wear tefillin. Even one pair you'd cover up. So it's going on when it says the shasa sakana. It's going back on the reisha as well. Not only where you find svasim and krichos, clause number 2, do you cover it up, But even clause number 1, matzah tefillin nichnasim ba zug zug, you'd also cover it up. Again, you have no option. It's a sakana. You can't wear them. Elisha bal kenafayim, right? Remember Elisha that he held it and they found in his hand the dove. We had it twice in the Shabbos. So therefore, that's so our mission that says covering it up is Shas Nachri. When it says that you bring them in pachas one at a time, that's speaking with sakonis listim. So that's sakonis listim. Then you bring it in. Amalei Abaya. B'mayu kimtul masnisim b'sakonis obedes kachavim. He's saying our mission is speaking with what? Where they'll kill you for wearing the tefillin. Amos Seifa. If Shimon Aimer, listen. In a scenario where you're scared, they're going to kill you. What do? Noisin l'chaveru v'chaveru l'chaverei. Kol shekain the avsha milsa. Certainly, you'll be publicizing the fact. If the reason you're covering it up is to save yourself, to be private, why would Rabbi Shimon say on that din, go ahead, begin a gauntlet to pass it along? Says the way that's not Pshan the Mishnah. The Mishnah is missing words. That's when you cover it up. Then you go ahead and bring a dalad amis and okay. So let's look back in the Mishnah. And by sakana you cover it up. I'm putting the words in the Mishnah. When do you cover it up? That's speaking about a sakanas of avodas kechavim. But if it's sakanas of listim, then Rav Shimon then you do dalad amis, pachas midalad amis. Rav Shimon says don't do pachas midalad amis. It's better to even go ahead and start a gauntlet and a train going down the line. So very geschmack. So he's not going on the case of goy where you're being giving attention with a dangerous attention. It's simply it's the bazillion of listim finding it, the Jewish listim finding it. Now, l'chayr the Tanakama says in the scenario of Jewish robbers, you should. The Tanakama says do it pachas midalad amis, and Rav Shimon says start the train, passing it down line. What's the machlokes? So Rav Shimon Noiman nois nechaver chaver chaver. B'may kamifli. What's the machlokes between Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon? Masav pachas v'arba amis adif. Tanakama says better to do 4 amis. The army nois nechaver chaver chaver af shemilsa the Shabbos. In other words, you're going to do that. It's going to be publicized at Shabbos, and look what you're doing. You're passing it along. So by walking 4 amis a little quieter, it's not going ahead and publicizing Shabbos. Umasava nois nechaver adif. To give to your friend, as Rav Shimon says, it's better to give to your friend. The Amim Malichin Pachas Arba Amis Zimnin the Lava Daitoi. Maybe you won't think. The Yasil Asvinu Arba Amis B'Shusarab. You may come to carry. Rav Shimon says the following: I'm more worried about one individual being over on an Issa Daraisa than Maris Ayin of appearing like more publicity. Whereas the Tanakama says I'm more worried about the public view than this individual. That seems to be in Machlokes. It says V'chein Beno. You should pass the kid along the line. What's the kid doing here? My boy Hassan, what's a kid doing in the field? It says the Menashe Tana in the Yeshiva Menashe they learned his wife, the mother gave birth to him in the field. He was born in the field. We don't want to leave him out there. What does it mean even 100? The Afagav the Koshalei Yada, even though to pass the kid around so much is hard, I feel hafi ha'adifa they want carrying pachas the Arba Amis and the Arba Amis. Better to pass him along. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Noisanad Mechavias. We said you can give a chavias to your friend, pass it along, even from chutz the tchum, even if the chavias was outside the tchum. For the Gemara, but less later Rabbi Yehuda Hodit Nan, Habehema v'Akelim Karaglei Abaylim. L'chora, the kli is limited to the tchum. We learned this, guys. The tchum of the owner, whatever the tchum of the owner is, that's the tchum of the kli. So how can he go ahead and bring the chavias chutz the tchum? The chavias should be subject to the tchum of the owner. We're speaking about b'ma'arin mechavis l'chavis. Tells you're not bringing the barrel. The barrel, in fact, is staying within its tchum. You're bringing it up until its tchum, and then you're pouring the water in that barrel into another barrel. So if my tchum A is here, and my tchum B is here, and tchum C is there, I'm going, whoop, whoop, but the barrel is never leaving the tchum. Either water is leaving the tchum, right? Let's see that. Either water is leaving the tchum. Rabbi Yehuda Tamei Damar Mayim Ein Behem Mamish. Mayim is not considered anything about mashis, and therefore Mayim doesn't have a tchum. So when Rabbi Yehuda said you can be mechutz tchum, he's not disagreeing with the Tanakama vis-a-vis the halacha of the barrel. The barrel is staying within the tchum of the owner. He's just saying the water can go ahead and go along. The water can be passed along. The water can be passed along. If you want to look at the first Taisvis, Tzadikei Yom and Aleph, Hamaitzi Tefillin, Hach Pirka, he's asking Taisvis bothered by a question. What is this doing in this Masechta? It should be Masechta Shabbos. Hach Pirka b'Shabbos Havilei Lemisni. It should be learned in Masechta Shabbos. Gabi Haitzas, by the halacha of Haitzah. El Mishum Diktani Sefer Rabbi Yehuda Oymen Noisin Adam L'Chaveri L'Chaveri L'Chaveroi V'Afil Chutz Tchum. So the whole reason that this parak, guys, is in this is because Agamara right now. That's why it's here. Because Agamara right now, that's why it's here. Okay, now you go back to us. It's important to learn Taisvis in the right time. I didn't bring it in. It wouldn't have had any effect had I brought it in when we opened the Mishnah, but now it has an effect. As Rabbi Rosenzweig smiles. Right? And if I'm saying that, that's the way to teach. Anyway, so we have the barrel staying within the tchum and the water coming. The nan Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Yehuda says Rabbi Yehuda poite b'mayim yishein behem mamish. The Gemara there in Beitza is discussing women going ahead and borrowing things from other women and saying they have to be in the tchum. And it says on that, in water you'd be potter if you leave it in the tchum. Now you have a problem. If you're telling me it's going on the water, what did the Chachamim retort in the Mishnah to Rabbi Yehuda? Amrullah, they told Rabbi Yehuda, like the Halech Su Yosim Ragli Baleha. It should not go longer than the Raglim of the Bailam. So if he's going on the barrel, that Rabbi Yehuda admits that. The barrel's not going more than the Tchum of the Baal. Again, from the retort of the Chachamim, we can infer that the pshat that you learn is not correct. Because they're saying, how can you bring the barrel more? But according to your pshat that you wanted to say, Rava, in the name of Rav Levi Saba, you wanted to say Reish Lakish, wanted to say the name of Levi Saba, the barrel is staying within the tchum. It's the water that's coming out. So what were the Chachamim telling him? Says so, and for the Gemara, I'll tell you what. It should not yahalech mashe bezu that this was in. In other words, the water that was in the barrel should not go more than the ragle bailam. Yahalech mashe bezu, but what was in this barrel should not go more than the feet of the bailam, which is the water. What was in the barrel was the water. So they're saying you said it's the water. They're saying no, the water also has to stay within. It's not going in the barrel. It's going in the water that was in the barrel. Guys, you good? Ema desham leil Rabbi Yehuda. When does Rabbi Yehuda say that's heicha debliya beisa? When does it have mamashas? We don't take into account the water. That's when it's absorbed in the dough, which is under discussion with the beitza. But heicha de isnahu beinayu. But with the water is be'en alone. Bishamale that it doesn't have mamashas. Hashta b'kedera Rabbi Yehuda butli. Here by kedera, by a pot, we're going to see Rabbi Yehuda says it's not batal. The water is considered there. Beinayu butli, where the water madach, where water is mixed in a pot, we'll say the water is considered there. Certainly, when the water is independent alone, we're going to say it's there. So the teretz you're giving is not a good teretz. Your teretz is you're passing the water along, and water doesn't have mamashos. Based upon a Mishnah in Beitza, that was speaking, it has no mamashos when it's absorbed in the dough when you don't see it. But when you see it, it too has mamashos. So if it has mamashos, how can it leave the tchum? The Tanya of Yudah, water and salt are bottled in the dough. They ain't betelim b'ketera, but not bottled in the pot. They write for it because of the soup. So guys, we're stuck. Back to the original question. Why does Rabbi Yehuda let you come from outside the tchum? You can't tell me it's the chavius, because chavius is limited to what? To the owner. You can't tell me it's the water, because the water what? Is also has a tchum of the owner. El Amar Rava, hacha bechavius shekonsa shvisa umayim shaloi konsa shvisa. Okay, I'm going to take you back in time. Do you remember anything about moving water? Since the water was moving Benish Mashos, the water flows, guys. If you remember, the water flows Benish Mashos. Even the 90s, since water flows, it doesn't have a tchum. So geschmack. This barrel has a tchum. The barrel has a tchum. The water doesn't have a tchum. So it could be you're pouring it from barrel to barrel, but the water doesn't have a tchum because there was water that was what was flowing. Therefore, you can bring it outside the tchum because it doesn't have a tchum. Now, umayim shloi konsa shvitza askinan. The bot lechavius legabe mayim. So no, excuse me, it's not speaking where I delete that. I told you wrong pshat. It's not speaking where you throw it in. It's speaking that the barrel will be bottled to the water. So despite the fact that the barrel has a shvisa, has a tchum, since the water doesn't have a tchum, the barrel will be bottled to the water, and therefore you'll be able to take the barrel chutz the tchum. That's the svara of Rev Yehuda. Now, where do you see that it's bottled? Kititnan. If someone on Shabbos carries out a live person in a bed, pater afalamita. But we have a rule, guy, a live person carries himself. If he's in a bed, he's carrying himself. The bed is bottled to him. It's ancillary to the person. Someone takes out food that's less than the share, the kli, pater afal kli. He'll be pater on the kli, mifnesha kli, tafaloi. So who adin that the kli here, the chavius, the barrel, will be bottled to the water. Since the water came from a live source, a stream, a river that's flowing, it didn't have a tchum. The mele very geschmack, you can bring the barrel outside the tchum according to Rabbi Yehuda. So the first way we learned pshat, we failed because we said throwing from barrel to barrel because water has no mamashas. We proved water does have mamashas when it is around alone. Now we have a second pshat according to Rava, who says since the water had no shvisa, the kli that is machzik the water, even though it did have shvisa, it did have a tchum. We were not limited to the tchum of the kli, rather than the anti-tchum of the water, and therefore you'll be able to carry it in. That's Rabbi's pshat. Maser Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'shiyara by a shiyara. Shiyara we said were 3 people in the midbar. We said we gave them tremendous kula. They were able to make these mechitzas gerua. They were able to make these mechitzas of shesti be'erev, and they were able to carry more than beis asayim. Here's another kula. Mashma this whole gauntlet b'shayara in shalei b'shayara loy. So how in the Mishnah did Rabbi Yehuda allow them to carry this chavius from one to the other? It's not speaking about shayara. It is a Mishnah. We want that sign. A Mishnah speaking about they're not they're encamped in the wilderness. They're encamped outside, and it's 3 people, and they're able to go ahead and schlep it, even though it's a large encampment. It must be you're bringing the water chutz tchum. You'll be able to do it. Abaye Amar b'shiyara afilu chavius shekonsa shvisa u'mayim shekona shvisa. No, by a shiyara, even if they both have a tchum, you'll be able to bring it. That's the chiddush. Even if they both have tchum. Shalei b'shiyara, if it's not a shiyara, chavius shekonsa shvisa u'mayim shekona shvisa would work. In other words, what's your kasha, guys? Look at me. What's your kasha? Look at the Zoom. What's your kasha? The only time they permitted carrying along the line was in a shayara, and therefore you should not be able to carry along the line in our Mishnah because it's not a shayara. You're right, it's not a shayara. When it said you can carry b'shayara, this is what it meant. If the kli had shvisa and the mayim had shvisa and they have a limitation, you're not limited to that limitation because it's shayara. If the kli had a limitation, but the water did not because it came from a flowing river, even shaloi b'shayara, you could bring it chutz tchum. In other words, we're reestablishing Rava's pshat. The kasha yes on Rava is not a kasha. It's not a kasha. Shayara is when they're both limited, both the water and the kli. Here, where you have the water not limited, Even shaloi b'shayara, you will be able to carry plus the tchum because the kli will be bottled to the water, and the water has no tchum, and you'll be good. Rav Ashi Amar, hacha b'chavius the hefker askinon. We're dealing with a barrel that had no tchum because it was ownerless, and it's ownerless. Mayim the hefker askinon that had no tchum, good, and had no tchum. Says Rabbi Yehuda, since they had no tchum, you can bring it from outside. In other words, they're going to get the tchum of whoever picks it up. And wherever they are, they are. We had a machlokas early in the Masechta. Let's say on Avenue B in East 95th Street, there was a barrel of hefka. Now, someone picks it up, and his tchum is different than Avenue B in East 95th Street. So that barrel will get his tchum because chetzei hefka are not koine their place. Rabbi Yochanan Nuri says, no, chetzei hefka, they are koine. Wherever they are, that's where they're koine. This barrel cannot be transported more than 2,000 amas from Avenue B in East 95th Street. That's it. So therefore, who's the Amrulay in our Mishnah? Rabbi Yehuda says that this can be outside its tchum because whoever picks that up can bring it to his tchum. That's Rabbi Yehuda. Whereas the Tanakama says, no, Chetzei Hefka is the Chachamim, they hold like Rabbi Yochanan Nuri, that Chetzei Hefka will be coined in their place. Umay like to halitzu Yosem Ragli Abaylim, Lehalfu Elu Yosem Ikli Sheyesh Abaylim. You can't carry this more than a Kli that has owners. So just like it has a Kli that has owners, you're limited to that space, so too the Kli of Hefka is limited to the space where it was. And that's the dialogue in the Mishnah. So you have two basic truths on how to answer the kasha. Rabbi Yehuda says that you can bring it outside the tchum. According to Rav, it's speaking where the water had no tchum, and even though the barrel did have a tchum, the barrel is going to be bottled to the water. Or it's speaking about where both the water had no tchum and the barrel had no tchum. Why? Because they were hefker. Question, and Rabbi Yehuda says that it's whoever picks it up that will get the tchum of that person. So even though it's outside, let's say when this person picks it up, his tchum is different. And it's going to be it's going to be more than the tchum of 95th and B. Doesn't make a difference because we go after the person. That's Rabbi Yehuda. Is the Tanakama says loy mahalach yosim ragle, meaning what? That wherever it is, it's going to get 2,000 amas from that, and therefore whoever picks it up is still limited to the tchum of the kli rather than the tchum of the person. A good tavach to all.
Good luck. Thank you. Good luck.